Here likes bullies. Nobody likes bullies, do we? No. And you know what this story is about? This story is about some bullies that stopped food and water and milk and coal and things that help people live from getting to young people and to families in a faraway city. And so this is how one guy tried to get special candy to a little girl because they otherwise couldn't get it because the bullies were stopping them. So the title of the book is Mercedes and the Chocolate Pilot. Berlin, Germany, 1948. One late August day, Mercedes slipped her hand under the white chickens she kept in the small courtyard garden behind her apartment building. Please let there be eggs, she wished, as the silver-winged planes flew above like guardian angels. But like yesterday and the day before, the chickens' nests were empty, except for one small egg. Mercedes fed each chicken a worm and tried not to cry. She loved her four feathered pets, but Mama would not be happy. Eggs were more precious than gold in West Berlin during the Russian blockade. The Russians were the bullies. Tomorrow, I want an egg from each of you, she scolded the chickens sternly, or Mama will say we cannot afford to keep you and must have you for dinner instead. Walking up the bomb-splintered steps to her apartment, Mercedes was sure her white chickens were just too scared of the thundering planes of the airlift to lay their eggs. Night and day they roared overhead like huge silver birds into nearby Tempelhof airfield to unload their supplies. But Mercedes would never complain about the great soaring grocery stores that everyone called the raisin bombers, because they carried yummy raisins to eat. They carried flour and clothing and coal too, and something else. Anybody know what that might be? Maybe candy? One day, Mama read her a newspaper story about the candy that came from the planes. The story told about the wonderful American chocolate pilot, Lieutenant Gale Halverson. Every day, he rained down sweets on the children who cheered the planes landing on Tempelhof runway. As Mama read, Mercedes learned how the tall, friendly pilot had talked with these children one day at the fence near the runway's end. The children didn't ask him for candy, Mama read, only sweet freedom. Still, before he had to go, he searched his pockets for gum, but he found only 2 sticks, and there were 30 children. What did he do, Mama? Mercedes asked. He split the sticks for 4 lucky children, Mama read, and the others tore slivers of the foil to smell as their sweet treats. Then, even though he knew he could get into terrible trouble, the pilot promised the children he would drop gum and candy to them from his plane the next day. He stretched out his arms and told them to look for the wiggle of his plane's wings. So when a pilot wants to signal to somebody on the ground, what they do is they wag their wings just like this so they know that they're sending a signal. And you know, we do that in our helicopter too. That night, the pilot made small candy-filled parachutes from handkerchiefs, Mama read on, and dropped them in secret to the children at the airfield the next day. He made 3 candy drops after that before the troubles began. Children's letters addressed to the chocolate pilot and Uncle Wiggly Wings began to arrive at the airfield. Then a candy bar almost hit a reporter on his head, and the colonel in charge at the Tempelhof read about the pilot's secret in the newspaper. He was caught. Did the colonel yell at him? Mercedes cringed. Mama laughed and said, only a little, and then he shook his hand and told him to keep dropping, but keep him informed. But won't he run out of candy? Mercedes asked anxiously. But Mama laughed again. People from all over America now send the pilot handkerchiefs for parachutes and so much candy that it fills 2 large railroad boxcars. Mercedes heaved a sigh of relief. May I go catch some candy at Tempelhof too, Mama? She asked hopefully. Not by yourself, Liebchen. Frau Simon warned quickly, the streets are too dangerous with soldiers and rubble everywhere. But I promise to take you to the airfield soon to see the chocolate pilot, she said, hugging Mercedes close to her. Mercedes smelled the smoky scent that still lingered in Mama's blue dress from the time when the bombs had fallen during the war. She knew Mama cried quietly at night for Papa, who hadn't come back from the fighting. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll stay close when we go," she said. "I'll even walk with my toes in your shadow, except when I run for our candy," she added happily. A few weeks later, as Mama promised, Mercedes stood at the airfield fence with the other hopeful children. Above her, thundering planes dropped out of the clouds, shaking the ground at her feet, and then great cheer came up from the children when they spotted the wiggle of the chocolate pilot's wings. Remember the wiggle? Suddenly, many small white parachutes floated down like marshmallow clouds. Mercedes ran excitedly with the other children, with her hands stretched out high to capture the prize in the sky. But at the very last second, a large boy nearby reached up a little higher and grabbed the parachute drifting toward her. And oh, the look in his eyes as he bit into the silky smooth chocolate. It was all Mercedes could think about the whole sad way home. That night, listening to the sound of the plane's engines above her home, Mercedes wiped at tears. If only she had caught the chocolate. It wouldn't matter if the chickens laid eggs. The candy would make her and Mama so happy. But what could she do? Then Mercedes remembered from the newspaper that children wrote letters to the chocolate pilot. With the moon as her lamp, she got out of bed to write one too. Carefully, as she had learned in school, she penned, "Dear Chocolate Pilot, we live near the airfield at Temple Hall, and our chickens think your airplanes are chicken hawks, so they become frightened when you fly over to land. They run in shelter, and some molt with no more eggs from them. It is a big problem for us. We need the eggs. But when you fly over the garden and see the white chickens, please drop some candy there, and all will be okay. I don't care if you scare them. Your little friend, Mercedes." Hey, bud. Frau Simon mailed Mercedes' letter the next day, quietly keeping the thought behind her lips that such a busy pilot didn't have time to make every child's dream come true. But Mercedes now waited in the garden with the white chickens every day, wishing on each angel plane above for her candy to fall from the sky. Returning to Rhein-Main Air Force Base in Frankfurt, where he slept and ate between his 3 round-trip flights into Berlin each day, Lieutenant Gail Halverson put down a handful of letters on his cot. It was late October. For months now, children's letters with crayon-colored drawings arrived for him from all over Berlin. Each week, the many letters were translated by 2 German secretaries and given to Lieutenant Halverson. A few got his personal reply, but all the letters touched his heart. Some even made Lieutenant Halverson laugh till he cried. A 9-year-old boy, Peter Zimmerman, wrote the chocolate pilot that his legs were too short to run fast for the candy, so he drew him a map to his house and instructed, "Fly along the big canal. At the second bridge, turn right. I live in the bombed-out house in the corner. I'll be in the backyard every day at 2 p.m. Drop it there." Lieutenant Halverson tried to find Peter's house from the sky, but when he couldn't, he boxed up candy bars and gum and sent them to Peter's address by West Berlin Post. But not before he had heard from Peter again, saying, "No chocolate yet? You're a pilot. I gave you a map. How did you guys win the war anyway?" Now, on this late October day, Lieutenant Halverson quietly opened today's letters. One by one, he read them. Then he lingered over a letter from a little girl with white chickens in her courtyard garden. He smiled and laughed and brought back a tear as he read, "We need the eggs, but when you fly over the garden and see the white chickens, please drop some candy there, and all will be okay. Your little friend, Mercedes." Lieutenant Halverson softly rubbed his head. His little friend's sweet hope was as fragile as the eggs and as precious to him as the white chickens were to her. But would he ever find the garden with the chickens? Even with Peter's map, he couldn't find his yard by the canal. As October days passed into November, a thick, soupy fog began to blanket Berlin's sky. Walking home with Mama, Mercedes prayed the pilots would be safe today. She prayed, too, that the fog would lift so the chocolate pilot could find her chickens in the yard at last. No candy had rained down yet, Maybe he had stopped looking for the chickens. Please don't forget me, Mercedes whispered to the white sky above. Frau Simon saw the troubled look on Mercedes' face. She squeezed her little hand with love, but said nothing. But once inside their apartment at 15 Handelstrasse, Frau Simon couldn't wait to give Mercedes the surprise that had come for her earlier that day. It was a package mailed from Tempelhof Airport, all neatly wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Quickly, Mercedes tore into the package. What do you think's in the package? Do you think I think it's a candy bar too. As he opened the box, or she opened the box, the sweet smell of candy spread thick as jam through the room. Chocolate bars, packs of white and green mint gum, pink bubble gum too, and the lifesaver rolls colored like the rainbow. Her chocolate pilot had found her at last. Mercedes saw Mama blinking back happy tears. She gave her a thick chocolate bar to eat and chose a creamy bar with nuts and caramel nougat for herself. She slipped off the wrapper and peeled back the silver foil little by little. She bit into the dark sweetness, letting the smooth taste melt away on her tongue. With each silky bite, she closed her eyes for a second, as if she had just tasted heaven. Inside the box was a letter from Mercedes. Mein liebe Mercedes, my dear Mercedes. Thank you for your small letter. Not every day I fly over your home, but surely often. I didn't know that in Handelstrasse there lived such a nice little girl. If I could fly a few rounds over Friedenau, I surely would find the garden with the white chickens, but for this there is not enough time. I hope that through what is with this letter, I give you a little joy, your chocolate uncle. The memory of this day would stay with her for the rest of her life. A few months later, in January of 1949, Lieutenant Halverson thought of little Mercedes and Peter Zeman, and all the children in Berlin as he flew out of Tempelhof for the very last time. It didn't seem possible that his 7-month tour of duty in Berlin airlift had ended. He was sad to go, but as the clouds parted toward America, he smiled, knowing his candy drops to the children would go on with the help of trusted pilot friends. What Lieutenant Halverson didn't know that day was that the story in Berlin wasn't over. Okay, that's the end of the story. But what happened